Welcome to Lola's Frugal Life Podcast. If you're on a mission to be more frugal with both your time and money, you're in the right place. In this podcast, we talk about topics that help enhance living a frugal lifestyle. The goal is to save time and money where we can so that we can use the rest on what matters most to us. We talk a lot about both time and money management so that we can waste as little as possible on both. We do this while also embracing a progress over perfection mindset. If that sounds good to you, then please stick around for the latest episode right after a few quick words from our sponsor. Hi everyone, welcome back to Lola's Frugal Life Podcast. So quick update before we get into today's topic. I did want to mention that I finally got a new cooking video up on the YouTube channel. I've been trying to do those more regularly. I started it about, I don't remember, maybe it was 2 months ago, and I said I was going to try and get one up a month. Then I thought I could do one a week, but it's just something that I have to make sure I try to incorporate into my weeks to try and remember to do those. But it's a little bit of work because you have to record it and then you have to do a voiceover and edit the video, and so it does take a little bit of time, but I am excited to get that up. So if you haven't been there yet, just check out the YouTube channel. It does have the podcast episodes in there too, but they're just audio with a static image just because it had a thing where you could just have it automatically upload. So I figured I might as well. It's another place people could get the podcast, if they weren't familiar with it. But the main reason really for the YouTube channel is to try and get these little cooking videos up for some of the recipes that I include in my meal plan. So definitely check that out if you haven't yet. And then right now, what I am loving is that we finally got snow here in New Jersey. It feels like it's been so long since we've had a snow day, and we had two back to back. So that was really cool. Well, no, I'm sorry. We didn't have two back to back. We had two in the same week. We had two snow days in the same week. So that was fun for my youngest daughter, who's in her senior year of high school. She's been hoping for a snow day for a long time, and we just haven't had any. I know we've had snow in New Jersey, but just not in the area where we live. And I got to work from home, so it was nice. We had a nice fire, and it was just nice to have everyone home and actually get some snow. So that was fun. Anyway, so for today's topic, the reason I gave this episode the title of Spending Your Money on Purpose is because I think that often people think that a frugal lifestyle is kind of one where we hoard our money or we live very cheaply. But as you guys know, the purpose of frugal living is not to live a life of sacrifice and be cheap about everything we do. It's really about looking at the resources we have and being really deliberate about what we do with them. It's really about making choices that are in alignment with what you value most. You make decisions with your goals and what you want out of life in mind. And it really takes work to be intentional and make sure that your money goes where you want it to go. But it's not about just spending money. It's about spending your money on purpose, knowing where your money is going and getting the most out of it. And while we all have a limit to how much money we have available to us, we will always get more out of our money when we pay attention to what we're doing with it. So really think about, what is it that you really value? Some examples of things you might want to focus on are family, education, a healthy lifestyle, community, or travel. Not all of our values will require that money be spent to focus on them. For example, spending time with family doesn't cost anything unless you spend time with family that lives far away. So you kind of have to think about what your different values are and how much money may be involved in getting the most out of those. So think about what you can do to spend your money in ways that are in line with your values. Take a look at what you're spending money on and see if maybe there's somewhere that you can cut back so that you can put more money to what's most important to you. Of course, there's certain things that we have to spend money on, but there are usually some areas that we can cut back on a little bit to allow some extra funds to go towards what's most important to us. It's also really important to really think about wants versus needs. Of course, there's nothing wrong with spending money on wants, but sometimes we spend money impulsively when we see something that we suddenly want that we never really wanted before that moment came. So if you're really trying to save money for something that's important to you, it's going to be necessary to give up some of those extra wants and just kind of spend money on the things that you actually need in order to get the things that you truly want to have, not just those kind of spur of the moment things that you suddenly decided that you needed. When you purchase something that is a want versus a need, really consider what you're giving up. Whenever you spend money on something, that means you no longer have that money to spend on something else. When you spend your money on purpose, you take time to consider what you're giving up when you're making a purchase. It doesn't mean you don't purchase things just for enjoyment. It just means that you're more thoughtful about your purchases. Setting goals is important too. Having specific goals in mind really helps you prioritize your spending. If you take the time to think about your financial goals that you're currently working on, you're going to be more likely to really consider whether making some certain purchase is going to have a negative impact on those financial goals. It kind of helps you make better choices about your money. But you also don't want to focus on too many goals, because if you focus on too many goals at once, you can often lose motivation because there's not really one thing that you can gain traction on. So, trying to keep your goals to just a few and kind of watching that progress on those goals can really help keep you motivated to make intentional spending choices. And then again, of course, putting thought into your purchases. Buying something because it's going to add value to your life and something that you have a budget for, it feels so much better than just buying something on a whim with no budget to cover the cost. Many financial experts suggest that you give yourself some time to think a purchase over, like at least a day before you go ahead and buy something, because it really allows you to decide if the purchase is in line with your financial goals and if you have the money to cover it in your budget. A lot of times the next day you're going to find that you don't even really care that much about having the item anymore. I know a lot of people do this too, but I like to put things in my Amazon cart as like saved for later. Many times I often end up forgetting about them. And had I just went and bought it now, I would have spent money on something that I probably could definitely live without and clearly wouldn't really miss having. So, really kind of take some time to think about things before you make a purchase to make sure it is something that you truly want and that you have the money available for. And then another thing that's really important that kind of helps you spend your money on what you want it to go to, spending your money on purpose, is tracking your expenses. I feel like one of the most helpful things that I have found with tracking where my money goes is tracking my expenses. Because a lot of times what happens is we think we know where our money's going until we actually start tracking it. It's hard to believe how much those $5 and $10 purchases here and there add up over the course of a week or a month. But by tracking expenses, we can really get a much better picture of where we might be able to cut back a little bit to put more money to other things that are more important to us. Even if you're against tracking expenses, just as a general practice, because it's just not something that you feel you would want to do in that much detail, just give it a little try for a period of time. You might really be surprised by what you're spending your money on. And even just doing that just for a little bit can at least give you the knowledge to know where some of your money is going and make you kind of think a little bit more about if that's in line with your goals and values, or if you want to maybe make a change to how you're spending your money. And then, of course, sinking funds. I love sinking funds. I've done episodes about them before. It's the one thing that really helped me make sure that I was spending my money the way I wanted to and make sure I had money available for the things that I knew would be coming. So, sinking funds are just a way to save up each week or month for things that occur at irregular times during the year. You just put a little bit away over the course of time, and then when the expense comes, you're prepared to cover the cost. For example, I just took my dogs to the vet this morning that I'm recording this, and it costs a lot of money to take two dogs to the vet by the time they get their shots and the exam fee and whatever tests and things like that. Just like the standard stuff, I asked for kind of just the basics, and it was still very expensive. But I already had the money put aside because I knew last year approximately how much the vet bill was. And I put an equal amount away every single week since last year. So then this year, when it came, I already had the money set aside. So I didn't have to stress over where I was going to get the money for this vet bill. And now that I had the new bill, I paid that. And now I will be doing the same thing over the next year. So, maybe you have something like that, or maybe you have an annual renewal for a warehouse membership, or you're going to need gifts to buy. You're going to need money to buy gifts for people over the course of the year. Any of those types of costs that don't occur on a regular, like weekly or monthly basis, are things you could potentially set up a sinking fund for, where you just put a little bit of that money away each week. And then when the time comes, you have the money available. I have so many sinking funds, but I started with only a few, and it's not necessary to have so many. I just enjoy having them for many different things. But you can do one that's just more like a bulk sinking fund where you just know I'm going to need this much money for all these various things and just pull from it. It doesn't have to be very detailed. But every time one of those expenses comes and you already have that money set aside, it is so helpful to really help you be able to have the money for those things that you're going to need and not suddenly have this expense hit and have no source to pull from it. Because what happens is if you're not putting that money aside, you're going to wind up spending that money during the week that when you earned it or when you get that money. So you might think, oh, I have this extra money, I'll treat myself to a latte at Starbucks or whatever. That's a bad example, but just whatever. Where maybe you could say, oh, well, you know what? Let me put this $5 aside towards whatever one of these items that you have that you're going to need to be saving for the future. And then also just kind of general savings to save up for little things when you can. Maybe you decide you'd like to take your family out to dinner once in a while, but it's not in your budget. Trying to save up a little bit each week until you have the money saved up can be really fun. You could do $5 or $10 a week, whatever it is that you can find in your budget. Sometimes we all end up with a little extra cash for whatever reason. And when you get that little extra cash, you might wind up just kind of spending it on whatever, it just kind of goes. But if you have little things that you're kind of working to save up for, you can put a purpose to that money and set it aside and do something that means something to you rather than just kind of spend it on, random things when you're out at Target or whatever you might wind up spending money on. It's such a different feeling to kind of be spending money on something that you specifically saved up for. Some things I like to save up for if there's a few extra dollars is just things like a pizza night or a Trader Joe's trip or just something kind of fun for the family to do. So just kind of think about like what are some little things that wind up costing money that you could maybe set a little bit of money aside for. That way you can kind of spend your money at that place knowing that you saved up for it. So of course it takes time to practice and develop these habits. Depending on where you're currently at, it can definitely sound a bit overwhelming to put all of this thought into where your money goes. But if you start small and really just pick one thing to focus on and start there, if you're not already tracking your expenses, that can definitely be a good place to start. It really can help you get a really good understanding of where your money is currently going, and that's always helpful. It's definitely a great place to start to begin being more intentional with your money. And when you can see where it's going, it will help you decide if that is what you want to happen with your money or if you can make some changes to make better use of your money to be more in align with your goals and values. So no matter where you are at financially, you're always going to be better off when you pay attention to where your money goes and spend it on purpose. So that's it for today's topic. I really hope this motivated you or gave you some inspiration to kind of take a look at where your money's going and seeing if you are spending it in the ways that are benefiting you most. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you back here next week. So thank you for checking in for this podcast episode. And don't forget, you can always email me with any questions or suggestions at lolasfrugallife@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at lolasfrugallife. And you can find a blog post for most of my episodes and definitely all of my meal plan episodes at lolasfrugallife.com. You can also join our private listeners group at facebook.com/groups/lolasfrugallife. And if you enjoy the show, please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen from. And I would love it if you would screenshot the show and tag me on Instagram so I could see you're listening. Also, if you can please take a couple of seconds to rate and review the podcast. Those ratings and reviews are what help the show come up better in search results so that other people can find this podcast. So that will really help me in growing my audience. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have an awesome day.